Most Japanese knitting machines use something called a sponge bar to limit the movement of the needles and control it so they don't bounce around too much. Most European-made machines use a spring for the same purpose. The Corona is completely different. The machines are quite old now, and all of the original material, which was not something most of us are familiar with, in my case, I couldn't even tell what it had been when I got my machine. It's all gone, and we don't know how to replace it. So Jack and I just spent an entire day figuring out how to do it better than we had up to now. This movie is on that subject. I'm not happy about that. I think it's causing some problems. Also, in working position, well, of course, the sinkers are loose. That's not my point. But in working position, it seems to me these needles are perhaps looser than they ought to be, which is probably why they don't like to stay in a straight line. Looking in the end of the machine, we can see several important features. This is the cord that I have used to control the movement or excessive movement of the sinkers. What you can see is just the tail end of it tucked out of the way. It actually slides through that channel and is discolored now with use, but it's working very well. That's a subject for another day. We won't disturb it today. This layer of felt seems to be just to control the noise level, and we will take it off today and then put it back on. In order to keep the videos of reasonable length and make things easy to find, getting into the machine and out of the machine and getting that felt off and on is its own separate movie. This is a needle retaining rod. It must be removed in order to change needles, but it's not enough to keep the needles from jiggling around. The blue cord turned out to be the wrong size, so don't emulate it, but it is in the channel that the needle movement dampener goes into. That's what we're going to be primarily working on today. Describing this photo from bottom to top, we tried dressmaker's boning. Did not work. The second thing is lamp wicking. That's what I've been using all along, so it does work. But the film that you saw earlier with the needles jiggling around, this wicking was in place at that time, so it doesn't work as well as I would like. We tried a nylon cord next. It won't go through. We tried aquarium tubing, which has worked for other machines, but it did not go through well either. Next, we tried I-cord, the blue one first, made on a bulky machine. We could get it through, and it worked, but we could not get it through with the needles in place, which it turns out it is necessary to do. Last try is probably a number 2 yarn. It's a wool blend, 4 stitches by however many rows make the length on the standard gauge machine. Since this one was apart, I used my Superba and went near the largest stitch size and knitted this cord. It's in there now, and I'm really pleased with the performance of the machine now. Feeding the replacement through the channel is tricky. So Jack invented a puller. It's really just a piece of wire, very resilient wire with a loop in it at the end. It's incredibly easy to get your wire fed in over the sinker posts, and it needs to be fed in under them. Guess how we know? People always hope that they can pull through the new item with the old one. We did not succeed at that, but we first tried with an item that was going to be unsuccessful anyway. So it is possible that somebody somewhere will get it right and pull through the new with the old. But here's what we did. We initially thought that removing all the needles would be an asset. It was not so. We have put them all back in to achieve eventual success.
All right, you saw that we made an uneven loop. It's kind of got an angular end right there. I took my needle nose and very carefully held them lined up and squeezed it shut till we could get a little piece of tape around the end of it so that once it goes through, we can pull it back without it hanging up. So here we go.
Jack's inserting it from the other end into the channel that originally held something or other, and we had wicking in there, but decided that wasn't enough cushioning to do the best job. Tell them what position it goes in.
All right, we're in this channel, but we're going under these sinker rods and over the needles. This is upside down.
And the machine's upside down, so if you think about it a minute, you'll realize
it's going under the needles and over.
Which is extremely unusual amongst knitting machines. Generally, we put our sponge bars in Brothers and Studios in above the needles, squishy side down. So if you have a machine that arrived with no padding left, it may not be obvious where some is needed, and it is needed here, we're quite sure. I'm calling what we used I-cord, but in fact, it's a stockinette strip, 4 stitches wide, that rolls itself into I-cord, and that's an important thing to know because of what comes next. We tried numerous methods of attaching the I-cord to the wire loop, and no kind of knot held up. So eventually we worked the end of the loop through the cord and pinched it back shut, taped it closed so it wouldn't hang up on anything. Then Jack pulled from one end while I unwound the roll that's natural to a strip of stockinette. The idea was to flatten it out a little bit as it moved through the channel, because the cord is nothing like the same shape as the channel. It's one reason it took us so long to think of trying it. We kept trying to emulate the shape of the channel, but this has worked better. We are periodically siliconing the cord as it goes through in order to reduce resistance, and that doesn't hurt the fabric of the cord in the least. I am letting you see the entire process in real time so you'll have a clear idea how long it actually takes. It's not instantaneous, and we did find that sometimes we had to jiggle the sinkers around to allow safe passage. We definitely do not want our wire hanging up on sinkers. I want to clarify about working the end of the wire into the cord. It did not just punch through in one spot. I worked it in, out, so that we could close it and tape around the place that it joined itself. The point of that was to divide the stresses of pulling on the cord so that one stitch wasn't taking it all. We'd had such bad results trying to get 1 or 2 strands of yarn to hold as a knot. They kept breaking. There is substantial pressure needed, and I tell you that so you'll realize that it's going to take some strength and energy to pull through. This isn't a zippity-doo-dah sort of project. Just as the cord was emerging from the channel, it sort of bunched up on its safety pin-like end, and Jack used surgical clamps to successfully pull it on through. There's room to leave a little bit of extra length on each end. It'll tuck into the end of the case without any problem, and it's a good idea to do so in case the cord relaxes after having been pulled, which it's very likely to do. So back into the case and knit. Now when I knit, my needles return to a wonderfully straight and even line. They're much easier to control, and they don't jiggle nearly so much. To celebrate, I embarked on a big project involving lots of short rowing, and it performed just brilliantly. What I made was version 2 of the Next Best Thing pillow from my blanket and pillow collection book. The one shown on the book cover is the bulky version. This is, of course, the standard gauge version, and here's what I knitted. The pattern in the book is written for any standard gauge machine. You just need to be able to match gauge fairly well, not too important for the pillow, and you have to know how to use hold position. which I will show you in another video. In fact, I may make a video of the whole pillow because I'm so pleased with it. I'll put a link to the book in case that's something you can use in the program notes. It's for sale on my website.